Hello, my sweet summer children. I'm back with some juice to get you through the long night. And the night is long and dark and full of terrors. So the other day, the internet kind of went off. Like, people were snapping because George R.R. Martin said something. So he was promoting Fire and Blood, and there is this video, and this could be spoilers for A Song of Ice and Fire. So I don't know. You tell me what you think. So this is what he said while speaking of Aegon the Conqueror. And Aegon finally decided to take over Westeros and unify the 7 kingdoms that existed at that time under a single rule. There is a lot of speculation that in some sense he saw what was coming 300 years later and wanted to unify the 7 kingdoms to be prepared for the threat that he eventually saw coming from the north. The threat that we're dealing with in A Song of Ice and Fire. So George R.R. Martin said that. Like, he said that. I will link the video of George saying this so you can see it for yourself. For George to weigh in like that on a theory is, like, to me, it's just so odd, like, to say the least. But I do want to clarify. He said there is a lot of speculation. So maybe it was just something that he was saying, like, in hopes that you faithful readers would buy Fire and Blood. But let's look at it. Like, let's look at the theory and see if it makes sense. First of all, honey, George is saying there's a lot of speculation. I wanted to see just how much speculation because I never really thought too much about it. So I Googled, but my Google search ain't really turning up much speculation. So maybe this is some shit that his friends are asking him in private. I don't know. I didn't find much of any substance about Aegon knowing about the White Walkers. But I do have a few thoughts of my own on this, and I did see a Tumblr post that was posted to Twitter. The link was posted to Twitter, and the post is made by a Tumblr called NobodySuspectsTheButterfly. I'll link her Tumblr below so you can check her out, see what she's got going on over there, because a lot of what I'm going to talk about is her research. So we need to start with the prophecy. The dragon has 3 heads. So when Daenerys visits the House of the Undying, she sees Rhaegar and Elia and a newborn Aegon. He is the prince that was promised, and his is the song of ice and fire. He looked up when he said it, and his eyes met Dany's, and it seemed as if he saw her standing there beyond the door. There must be one more, he said, though whether he was speaking to her or the woman in the bed she could not say. The dragon has 3 heads. So for some reason, Rhaegar believes the dragon must have 3 heads. But that's not all. When Daenerys reaches the audience chamber with the Undying Ones, they tell her, 3 heads has the dragon. The ghost chorus yammered inside her skull with never a lip moving. They tell her a lot of other things as well, but she asked Jorah specifically about the dragon that has 3 heads. The dragon has 3 heads, she sighed. Do you know what that means, Jorah? Your Grace, the sigil of House Targaryen is a 3-headed dragon, red on black. But later, Jorah gives her a more specific answer. The dragon has 3 heads, remember? You have wondered at that ever since you heard it from the warlocks in the House of Dust. Well, here's your meaning. Balerion, Meraxes, and Vhagar, ridden by Aegon, Rhaenys, and Visenya, the 3-headed dragon of House Targaryen. 3 dragons and 3 riders. So the sigil of House Targaryen is the 3-headed dragon, but Valerians never used sigils. Aegon only had a sigil to basically fit in. Heraldic banners had long been a tradition amongst the lords of Westeros, but such had never been used by the dragon lords of Old Valyria. When Aegon's knights unfurled his great silken battle standard with a red 3-headed dragon breathing fire upon a black field, the lords took it for a sign that he was now truly one of them, a worthy high king for Westeros. But why did Aegon choose the 3-headed dragon breathing fire upon a black field? Is it what Jorah said to represent himself and his 2 sisters, Visenya and Rhaenys? Or was it something else, like prophecy? Like the same prophecy Rhaegar was obsessed with, and the same prophecy that the Undying Ones have given to Daenerys? Was it the same prophecy that Aemon talks about on his deathbed? He asked Sam to read for him from a book by Septon Barth, whose writings have been burned during the reign of Baelor the Blessed. Once he woke up weeping. "The dragon must have 3 heads," he wailed, "but I am too old and frail to be one of them." So the theory is that Aegon made his sigil the 3-headed dragon because of the prophecy the dragon must have 3 heads. If you think about it, dragons breathing fire on a black field is very symbolic of the long night. Dragons breathing fire during the long night. But where would Aegon have heard such a prophecy? Where did this prophecy come from? Well, if the Dragonstone caves exist in the books like they do in season 7, then I mean, he only needed to take a walk through the finger paintings of his cave. But let's focus. So when Aemon talks about the dragon must have 3 heads, directly before that, he asks Sam to read him from a book by Septon Barth. Well, I'm not sure exactly what book it was, but speaking of Septon Barth, Septon Barth's claim that the Valyrians came to Westeros because their priest prophesied that the doom of man would come out of the land beyond the narrow sea can safely be dismissed as nonsense, as can many of Barth's queerer beliefs and suspicions. So first of all, the Archmaester that wrote the World Book is biased. He's writing it from his own point of view. He's the unreliable narrator. If he's telling us to dismiss something as nonsense, that means we need to look at it. I've said it before. Septon Barth has all the juice. He got the juice on extra juice. Maester Aemon talks about Septon Barth. And then Maester Aemon says the dragon must have 3 heads. Maester Aemon wants Sam to read him a book written by Septon Barth. And he wakes up from a dream after reading this book and says the dragon must have 3 heads. And this is dating back to Valyria. This is dating back to Valyria before the Targaryens fled Valyria. Also, another big clue is from A Feast for Crows. Alerus, known as the Sphinx, he comes to the Quill Tankard. There's talks of dragons, and he says, "The dragon has 3 heads," he announced in his soft Dornish drawl. That might not seem like anything at first, but he's working with Marwan the Mage. And Marwan wrote his own book. When Asha or Yara visits her uncle, he's reading it. What reading was so urgent that you leave your guest without a host? Archmaester Marwan's book of lost books. He lifted his gaze from the page to study her. Hatho brought me a copy from Old Town. He has a daughter he would have me wed. Lord Roderick tapped the book with a long nail. See here? Marwan claims to have found 3 pages of signs and portents, visions written down by the maiden daughter of Aenar Targaryen before the doom came to Valyria. So for Alerus to say the dragon must have 3 heads, he likely heard that from Marwan, and Marwan heard it and wrote it in his book of lost books, and the dragon has 3 heads, likely came from Aenar Targaryen's maiden daughter before the doom, Daenerys the Dreamer. It is also related to Azor Ahai about when the Red Star bleeds and being born amidst salt and smoke, which Aegon probably thought that was him, born on Dragonstone amidst salt and smoke. But Maester Aemon previously connects all of this prophecy into one, basically. So he talks about the dragon needing 3 heads, and he also talks about being born amidst salt and smoke and how they thought it was Rhaegar, and then they thought it was Rhaegar's children, but it's actually Daenerys. I mean, I'm digging the theory for real. And if you really think about it, there are so many parallels to Aegon conquering Westeros that Daenerys has with conquering Westeros. I've talked about the parallels previously and history repeating and all of that, but one parallel that bugs me the most is the king who knelt, the king in the north. It's a direct parallel to Jon. Jon bends the knee to Daenerys, and we know why he did it. He handed over his kingship because the threat to the north was bigger and more important. Is that why Torrhen Stark bent the knee as well? The popular belief is that he bent the knee a king and rose a lord because he didn't want his men to die and he didn't want their swords to forge Aegon's throne. But he actually could have killed the dragons. He could have likely stopped Aegon's conquest. We get a vision from Bran in A Dance with Dragons of a dark-eyed youth breaking off pieces of the weirwood and shaping them into arrows. This man is Brandon Snow, Torrhen Stark's bastard brother. Brandon Snow was going to kill the dragons with weirwood arrows. Torrhen's scouts had seen the ruins of Harrenhal, where slow red fires still burned beneath the rubble. The king in the north had heard many accounts of the field of fire as well. He knew that the same fate might await him if he tried to force a crossing of the river. Some of his lord's bannermen urged him to attack all the same, insisting that northern valor would carry the day. Others urged him to fall back to Moat Cailin and make his stand there on northern soil. The king's bastard brother, Brandon Snow, offered to cross the Trident alone under the cover of darkness, to slay the dragons whilst they slept. King Torrhen did send Brandon Snow across the Trident, but he crossed with 3 maesters by his side, not to kill, but to treat. All through the night, messages went back and forth. The next morning, Torrhen Stark himself crossed the Trident. There, upon the south bank of the Trident, he knelt, laid the ancient crown of the kings of winter at Aegon's feet, and swore to be his man. He rose as Lord of Winterfell and Warden of the North, a king no more. 300 years ago, when Aegon conquered, the North still remembered. They remembered the long night. They knew the threat was there, and the theory is so did Aegon. So if he did know, how did they forget? How did everyone forget? Well, 1 year turns to 10 years, 10 years turns to 100 years, and then 100 years turns to 200 years. Traditions and legends and lore fade and become distorted. Something your family feared 200 years ago to you is just a hearth tale. But everyone didn't forget. There was at least one Stark and one Targaryen that remembered. Lyanna and Rhaegar. And they both died trying to fulfill the same prophecy that Aegon thought was meant for him. But what do you think about this? Firstly, to me, it makes a ton of sense. I think it's really interesting, but I'm not sure that George would give so much away. But then again, is he really? I mean, he isn't really giving away that much at the same time because it clearly wasn't Aegon. But if it was written by Daenys the Dreamer, then you better be sure that the dragon has 3 heads. Now, what that means at this point, I guess that's another video. But anyway, let me know what you think down in the comments. As always, thanks for watching. Thanks to everyone that supports me on Patreon. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. Please click that subscribe button, hit that notification bell, and join the Sweet Summer family. Okay, my sweet summer children, have a good day.